this is Aria, and today I'm going to show you how I made this animation using geometry nodes. I created this as an NFT for Foundation app, which I just recently joined. So if you're interested in NFTs, then maybe this will help give you a start in making them. If you enjoy my work, make sure to like and subscribe. And as well, if you want to get a slightly modified copy of the blend file for this animation, head over to my Patreon page and sign up to become a member. Also, this month I'll be dropping my first ever sound pack on Patreon as well. And then I'm going to be adding new sound packs every so often as well. So just keep an eye out for that. Okay, here we go. Let's open up a new scene in Blender. Hit A to select everything and then hit delete. Shift A, mesh and plane. Then we want to turn this into a triangle. So let's hit tab to go into edit mode. Just click and drag to select any 2 points that are beside each other. Then you can either right click and go to merge or hit M and click merge at center. Next hit 7 to go into top orthographic view. I'm just going to hit G to move and Y and then just bring this vertice down just a little bit. Let's hit A to select everything, G, Y, and we'll just bring this up till it's a bit more centered. It doesn't need to be perfect. Then let's just zoom out a little bit and we can extrude this face, so let's hit E and type in 22. We just need to add some loop cuts to this, so Control R, click, hit escape, and down at the bottom let's open up this menu and type in 30. Next we want to add some vertical cuts on each of the sides, so Control R and click, escape, and let's set the number of cuts to 2. Let's do the same for both other sides. Great, so now we can just leave the last 2 selected. Then we're going to hold Shift and Alt and select these 2 edges as well as the 2 on this side. Then once you have those selected, hit S to scale, Shift and Z to lock it to the X and Y only, and type in 0.4. The final thing we need to do is just delete the faces on top, so let's hit 3, or you can click here to go into face select mode. Select this top face and delete. Then we just want to do that to the bottom as well. Select that face and delete. Now we can hit tab to go back into object mode, and I'm just going to hit the decimal key on my numpad just to reset my view. Head over to the modifiers tab, select this, and the first thing we're going to add is a simple deform. We can leave this at twist, but let's change the axis to Z instead of X. And then for the angle, we'll type in 240. Let's select this one more time, simple deform. Then this time we're going to select bend. And for the angle, we'll type in 360 degrees. If I just zoom in a bit, you'll see that this is a little bit off, so it's not going to be perfect, but let's get this a little bit closer. So hit tab to go into edit mode, and you'll see that it sort of brings this outline of our original object. Then we'll just hit A to select everything, then G to move, and hit Y. Now we just want to bring this over until it's matching a little bit closer, and click. So just try to get that as close as possible, but honestly, as long as it's close, it won't matter that much since we're just going to be using this as a guide for our particles. Then the next thing we want to do is make this spin. So if I just turn these off for a sec, I'm just going to show you that if we go up to the Z rotation and turn this, you'll see that our object is turning like we want it to. But as soon as we turn our deforms back on and do the same thing, you'll see that this sort of rotates the entire object, which is not really what we want. So what we need to do is just add an origin for our deform. So let's hit Shift A, empty, and we can click plane axis. Select back on our plane. By the way, since this doesn't look like a plane anymore, let's just rename this to Mobius loop, just so that we know what it is. And as well, since we're here, we can just name this bend origin. Then again, if we select back on our loop and go down to our second deform, we can click this and select bend origin. And now you'll see that if we rotate this, it rotates upon itself as opposed to around the Z axis. So we can do that now. Let's just go back to frame 1, right click and add a single keyframe. Then click here to go to the final frame. And you can do whatever you want. I'm just going to do something like 540. You'll see that it speeds up as it starts, so let's make that a linear progression by hovering over the timeline, hitting D and selecting linear. Now if we hit play, you can see that it's got one constant speed. Select both of these, G to move and Y, and then we'll just bring this more over into the center. And now that we've got that, we can start adding our geometry nodes. Make sure to save, then just bring your mouse down to the corner here until you see this plus symbol. Then just click and drag to add a new window, select this, and go into the geometry node editor. Select new, which will just give us our basic setup here, so we've got our input and output. But having these separate just means that we can put stuff in between it to calculate. So just like everywhere else, if we want to add something, we just hit Shift A, and we can go to all of these here and find our nodes that way, or you can just search. So first let's go to point, and we're going to go to point distribute. Then just hover this over top of the line and click. What this will do is just take our geometry and add some points randomly across it. These aren't actually geometry, these are basically just representations. So what we can do to add actual geometry is add a second node, which is also under point, and it's called point instance. And if we drop that into the node tree, you'll see right away that everything disappears just because we don't actually have an object assigned to that. So let's just create a simple cube, Shift A, mesh, and cube. I just like to bring mine out of the way, so I'm going to hit GZ just to bring it down. Now we want to go back to our geometry nodes, but you'll see that it's kind of all disappeared, so let's just head over to the right and select our Mobius loop. If you have this selected already, but you're not seeing your nodes, it could just mean that you've got a different modifier selected. So just under the modifiers tab, just make sure that you have geometry nodes selected. Then once we have our node tree back, we can click on Object and select Cube. As well, I'm just going to rename that to Cube Particle. And then select back on the loop. Next, we want to change the size of these, so let's hit Shift A and go to Attribute. And then let's select Attribute Randomize. Basically, what this node will do is let you choose an attribute that you want to change. So for our attribute, we're going to type in Scale, and make sure you type it in exactly like you see it here. Then for the max size, we're going to type in 0.075. Now you'll see that we've got these small little cubes scattered all over. We do want to add some more, so if we head back to our original node, we can add more, but before we do that, instead of having the random option, we're going to select the second option here. And the only difference between these two options is that this will give us the ability to set a minimum distance between our particles. So let's do that, and we're going to set this to 0.1. Of course, nothing changed because these are farther away than that. But if we were to type 200 in our density, you'll see that we've got lots of particles and they are relatively distanced apart. Then we just need to add one more node, so we're going to click this and hit Shift D to duplicate it. Instead of using our scale, we're going to type in rotation and set the max to something like 3. Now if I hit play and zoom in a little bit, you'll see that each of our cubes has a different amount of rotation. Also, now that we're done with our cube, what we can do is just head up to the top, and I'm just going to add the render toggle and then just hide the cube. Feel free to keep this open, but just for the sake of space, I'm just going to close this. The next thing that we're going to do is add the cylinder that went through the center of this, so make sure that you're on frame 1. Head over to the modifier tab, and we can just turn these off for a moment, just so that we've got our original geometry back. Then let's hit Shift A, Mesh, and we can add a cylinder. G, Z, and type in 1 just so that the bottom is even with our other object. Control A and select all transforms. That way our pivot point is at the bottom where we want it to be. So next we can select our loop. Then we just want to select and copy, so Control C, this value here. Select our cylinder, and then we're just going to paste that over the Y. And now you'll see that our pivot points are in the same spot. Now we can hit 7 to go into top orthographic view, and you'll see right away we can't see our Mobius loop, and that's because it's just a plane, so we can't really see it from this angle because it's infinitely thin. So what we need to do is head up and select our loop. Then we're just going to add a temporary modifier, so select here and click Solidify. Now you'll be able to see the outline. Then select the cylinder, hit S to scale, Shift Z to lock to the X and Y. Then just drag your mouse until it's within the borders of our loop. Now we can just quickly select our loop again and remove our solidify. Hit 3 to go into orthographic. Turn on our X-ray toggle and select our cylinder. S to scale, Z. Then we just want to drag this up until it's the same height as our loop. Now we can hit Tab to go into edit mode, and what we need to do is just add some cuts the same way we did with our loop. So Control R and then hit escape. Set the number of cuts to 30. We just need to delete the end caps, so let's make sure that we're in face select mode. Turn the X-ray off, then we're going to select this face, delete, and then we just want to do this to the bottom face as well, so select, delete, and face. Finally, we can hit tab to go back into object mode and add our modifiers. So while you've got the cylinder selected, shift select the loop, then let's go to object, and make links, and select modifiers. Last thing we need to do is just apply our modifiers again, so let's apply these 3 for our loop. Select our cylinder, and we can delete the geometry nodes, we don't need that. We also don't need the twist, but let's leave the bend modifier on and click this to activate it. Since we've made this procedurally, we can make this thinner or thicker by hitting S to scale, Shift Z, then just dragging our mouse to change the radius. And that's it, so let's head over to the particles now and we can add our particles. So with the cylinder selected, let's just hit the plus to add a new particle system. And depending on the speed of your computer, you can go up or down. If you've got a really slow computer, you can even go as low as like 5,000. Then we just want to change the start and end frame to match our animation, so 250. Let's leave the lifetime to 50 and set the random to 0.9. Next, we can go to our velocity and set this to 0 so that there's 0 velocity, and close that. Select rotation, and all we need to do is just add some random rotation, so it doesn't really matter. This will just help your particles get a little bit of glinting with the lights. We are also going to add a force later, so let's just add some damping and some drag. So set the drag to 1 and the damping to 0.5. Next, let's go to the render tab and add a particle. So select this and click object. Shift A, mesh, and we can add an icosphere. Let's just bring this out of the way. Select back on our cylinder, then let's scroll all the way down. Under the instance object, we're going to select icosphere. We can leave the scale as is, but let's set the randomness to 0.7. So now what we need to do is add a force. Shift A, force, and let's select force. Just head over to the right to the physics properties. Let's set the strength to 38, which of course just is how strong the push is. Then finally let's set the noise to 0.5 just so that we've got a little bit of variance. Make sure to save, and if I hit play you can see that we've got our particles. And it's looking really good, so we can select our cylinder again, and if you just want to name this emitter, it will just help us to remember what it is. So again, select the cylinder, head into the particle tab, and then we're going to go to cache and hit bake. Now if I scroll through, you'll see that we've got all of our particles. If you found that didn't take too long, feel free to add more particles as well. I do need to keep this a little bit exclusive just because it is an NFT, but I'm just going to give you an idea of how I created the rest of the scene. So you saw in mine that I had an Ethereum object in the center, and that's just something that I quickly built on my own, so I'm not going to do the whole thing. So Shift A and add a cube, tab to go into edit mode, and make sure you're on vertex select. Grab all 4 of the top vertices, M, and merge at center. Just head to the bottom here and select all of these vertices. Hit I to inset, and we'll just drag this in, then M and merge at center. Now we can just hit G, Z, and just bring this down. A to select everything, R to rotate, Z, and type in 45. G, Z, and we can just bring this up. So now that we've got everything there, we can head over to the shading tab and start adding our materials. The first thing I like to do is deal with the background, so let's head over to the world properties. Leave this at color, but we're just going to select this and bring the value all the way down. I'm just going to turn on the render preview, then I'm just going to make this completely dark by heading over to the render properties, heading down to the film, and unchecking transparent. By the way, if you can't see anything, it probably means that you've got no overlays on, so just make sure that you've got those on. I'm going to select the cylinder first since it's the simplest, click New. We want to change this to an emission shader, so you can search for it, but what I like to do is just head over to the materials properties here, select this, and select emission. Click here and give this a nice blue color, and set the strength to 150. You'll see that it doesn't really look blue, though it is a little bit bright, so what we need to do is just head back into the render properties. And since we're using Eevee, we just need to add a few things, so ambient occlusion, bloom, which is super bright, so let's just bring this down. Then the final thing that we're going to add is screen space reflections. And now you'll see that we've got a little bit of reflection on our particles. Now we can select those particles, so let's select the cube particle and click New. Select the base color and we're just going to bring the value down just a little bit. Let's bring the metallic all the way up and the roughness all the way down. What I did was also add a bump just to get some more reflections. So Shift A and type in bump. Shift A again and type in brick to search for brick texture. And hook this up to the height. Now you'll see that there's a little bit more diffuse with our lighting. The final thing that I'm going to do as well is select the brick texture. If you've got the Node Wrangler add-on, you can hold Control and hit T to add these two nodes. If you need the Node Wrangler, just go to Edit, Preferences, and search for Node. Then we just want to select the UV option and hook that into the vector. And that's good. If you're still finding this a little bit dark, what you can do is just bring the roughness up a little bit, and as you do that, you'll see that there's a little bit more color. If you do want to add just a little bit more color, you can just select the base color and bring this back up a little bit if you need. I'm just going to hit play just so that some of our particles start to emit, and we can add our shader to that as well. Over to the right, and we just want to find our particles, so let's just select our icosphere and rename it particle. Click New. Select the base color and you want to set the value to 5. Bring the metallic all the way up, and then bring the roughness down quite a bit. Now we can select on our ether object here. I'm just going to rename this. Click New. Let's bring the metallic all the way up and the roughness down. Then I'm also going to select the base color and bring that down as well. I also had some emissive edges on this, so a quick way to do that is hit Tab to go into Edit mode. I'm just going to go into flat shading so you can see better. Hit A to select everything. Hold Control and hit B to add a bevel. If you just hold Shift, you can scale in small increments. Then now you'll see that we've created an extra face around all of our edges. I'm just going to go into Face Select mode and select these 8 faces by holding Shift and clicking. If you just go up to the left and click Select, you can click Invert. Now we've got all of the extra faces selected. Head over to the Materials Properties, click the plus button to add a new material and click New. Then, very important, make sure that you click Assign or else it won't assign those faces to the material. Select this and let's select Emission. Now we can head back into the render preview and hit Tab to go back into object mode. And you'll see now that we've got 2 different materials for this object. So let's select our new material, give it a blue color, and then set the strength to 150 as well. Now that we're done all of our materials, I'm just going to head back into the layout and turn our render preview on again. So what we can do now is hit Shift A and click Camera. Then you just want to roughly set up your view, Control Alt and hit 0 on the numpad. And to bring up your transform settings, and then you can just set your camera up. Once you've got that, you can head over to the camera properties by selecting this icon and add some depth of field. Let's use our Ethereum object as our focus and set the f-stop to 0.2. I'm just going to turn off the overlays, and then the final thing I did for my camera was just change the aspect. So what we need to do is just head over to the right here into the output properties. Then for the resolution, we just want to set these both to 1080 and just set up our camera one more time. That's it. So now we can head over to the rendering tab. I like to add motion blur, but if you do, make sure to add some steps. Save and render image. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Make sure to like and subscribe if you did. And if you want to get a slightly modified copy of the blend file that I used for this animation, just head over to my Patreon page and sign up to become a member. I'll see you soon. Bye!